Moms on Mike's Mother's Day contest. Is there a mom in your life who truly inspires you? A mom who has overcome challenges and obstacles while still showing up every day with love and strength. Maybe your own mom went above and beyond in ways you'll never forget. We want to hear her story. Send us your nominations and we'll share them on our special Mother's Day episode. After hearing these incredible stories, our listeners will vote for the mom they feel deserves to win a $100 gift card to a local restaurant. Let's celebrate the amazing moms in our community. We can't wait to read your stories. All entries must be submitted by April 25th, 2026. Send your entries to us via email, momsonmikes@gmail.com, or through our Facebook page at Moms on Mikes, or Instagram at Moms on Mikes Podcast. Hello and welcome to Moms on Mikes. I'm Joanne.
I'm Cash.
And I'm Sophia.
In this episode, we are continuing our coverage of the West Memphis 3 case. Last week, we did a brief synopsis of the case and did kind of a deep dive into Damien Echols. This week, we're going to go through the timeline leading up to the assumed last sighting of the boys, the night of the murders, the following day, and when they had just discovered the bodies. This may get a little confusing because there's a lot of people involved and witnesses, so just try and keep up with the names, I guess. On May 5th, 1993, Pam Hobbs, Stevie Branch's mom, picked him up from school at Weaver Elementary School at 2:45. Christopher Byers and Michael Moore finished school at 3 p.m. It's unclear why she picked him up 15 minutes before school ended. I couldn't find any reasoning for that. It doesn't really make a difference in the timeline or anything like that, so... Michael lived only about a minute walk from the school, and Christopher lived across the street. And then Stevie lived a few blocks away. So they're all relatively close to the school. Michael went home after school and changed into his Cub Scout uniform. And at 3:10, his sister gave him permission to go over to Stevie's house. John Mark Byers, Christopher's stepfather, arrives home and expects to see Christopher, as he was supposed to wait for his big brother Ryan to let him into the house because he didn't have a key because he's 8. But Christopher was not there. Ryan arrived home at 3:38. Around that same time, Michael Moore stops by Stevie Branch's house and asks Pam Hobbs if Stevie can come play. Initially, Pam says no, but they eventually wear her down and she says yes, telling Stevie if he's not home by 4:30, he'd be grounded. At 3:30, Christopher arrives at Stevie's house and Pam tells him he just missed Stevie and Michael. Amanda, Stevie's younger sister, was watching Muppet Babies, and Christopher asks to stay and watch it, and Pam agrees. So Christopher stays there for a little bit instead of heading right out to go and play with his friends.
At 3:30, Carrie Morris will claim to see Michael Moore walking down the road a couple blocks ahead of Damien Echols, who is, according to Carrie, following him. Carrie went to the police and told them about this. She claimed that Michael was heading home to get his bicycle to go riding with Stevie Branch. At the time when she went to the police with the sighting, she was already facing a theft charge. The charge was dismissed 1 month later. She didn't testify in the case. In 1996, she was sentenced to 3 years in prison for accessory after the fact when she helped to hide bloody clothes when her husband stabbed another woman to death. So even though this sighting sounds incriminating, Carrie Morris's credibility issues are serious enough we can assume this sighting is false. Around the same time, Michelle Echols, Damien's sister, said that she and her parents picked up Damien and Dominic, Damien's girlfriend, from the laundromat. They drove Dominic home, then went to pick up medicine for Damien from the pharmacy, arriving back home around 5 p.m. Damien would then talk to a girl named Jennifer Bearden. However, that's inconsistent with the time that Jennifer will say she spoke to Damien, and also inconsistent with the story that Damien and Jason tell. They said all 3 of them were together, and Michelle says they weren't all together at the laundromat. At 3:30, 2 boys are seen by R.L. Fountain riding their bikes on North 14th Street. Around the same time, Ken Gover is driving a hitchhiker he picked up on I-40. Gover said the man was intense and angry. Ken dropped the man off at the convenience store near the Blue Beacon truck stop. He told police about a tattoo the man had on his left forearm, a 6 to 8-inch tattoo of a devil sitting on his haunches with 3 claws up and the face of a traditional devil with a pointed chin and horns. This is the hitchhiker, one of the people that some believe to be a valid suspect. At 4 o'clock, the Muppet Babies ended and Christopher leaves Stevie's house. Carrie Morris would say that at 4:30, the 3 boys would come to her house and ask if her daughter could go riding bikes with them. Once again, this is unlikely because Christopher was not with the other 2.
There would be numerous eyewitness accounts putting the boys at different ends of the town. Some people say they saw all 3 of them riding bikes, but Christopher did not have a bike. There would only be 2 bikes found and 3 boys. So why there were so many claims to the contrary, we don't know. Some people say they saw one of them walking by themselves. Others said they saw 4 boys. Eyewitness statements are notoriously unreliable, not just in this case, even though they are extremely unreliable in this case, but in general, we don't know that an event will be significant when it happens until much later. So it's very rare that people get the details right, such as time and how many were there, unless there is a significant reason that you would know the details. For example, if you start work every day at 8 a.m. and there was an accident outside your workplace in the morning and you said it happened at 7:55, and I know that because I always arrive at 7:55 because I start work at 8, then that would be considered a reliable witness. But without something significant like that to ensure the time, your statement would be unreliable. There were also many claims of sightings of the boys that day, some of which contradict each other and some that can simply be not true. This is most likely not intentional. It was May, the weather was nice, there were most likely kids out riding bikes often. So whether people are simply misremembering what day it was that they saw them, or if they are mistaken about whom they saw, is very possible. It was also a few days after the boys were found that the police were canvassing the neighborhood and interviewing these people, and by that time the word was out already about what had happened, and some people may have just wanted to feel like they were helping or involved in some way. Matthew, Jason Baldwin's little brother, will tell police that Jason left the house at 4:30 to go cut his uncle's grass. It was about a 30-minute walk to his uncle's house. His uncle told police that Jason got to his house at 4:30 to cut his grass. So again, people are not always reliable with time. Jason's uncle said he left around 6:30. He remembers the time because Jeopardy was on when he got there and Wheel of Fortune was coming on when he left.
Yeah, so I totally see that, you're not necessarily reliable without something to anchor you to that time. We remember things based on what time you start work or what time you do this, if it's something you do every day. But if it's just a random evening, you're usually at home every evening, you could be remembering a time that you saw them a week prior or 2 weeks prior or the day before, right? It's hard to something concrete to hold that timeline. It's hard to say from a witness standpoint what day it was.
And also the time that it happened. Not many people had cell phones or really watches and...
Exactly. Yeah, you're assuming that when you see these boys, you go, oh, right? That's not going to reply or go well on the... because you can't see me. But it's not often if you see the boys, you're going to look at your watch and remember that time, right? Like, I feel like they had the best intentions, but it made it so much harder for the police to really narrow down this timeline. At 4:30, Terry Hobbs arrives home from work. He asks Pam where Frog Legs, that was his nickname for Stevie. At 4:45, Terry and Pam drive by Michael Moore's house to see if Stevie was around. He wasn't there, and neither was Christopher. Pam had to go to work as her shift started at 5. Between 4:30 and 5, Heather Cleet, Jason Baldwin's girlfriend at the time, tried to call him, but there was no answer. She called again at 6:15, but the line was busy. At 5:15 on 8/24 holiday, Christy Blanchard said she saw 2 of the boys, one with a Scout's t-shirt and one with a white t-shirt, riding bikes. This sighting is most likely accurate as the Scout t-shirt is a pretty distinctive item of clothing, and we know that Michael Moore was wearing his. There are many things that people claimed to have happened at 5:30, and it's impossible for all of them to have happened. So just keep that in mind. Jeff Martin says he sees the boys heading down Goodwin towards Robin Hood. Jeff said they waved at him. They were riding bikes with one on one bike and two boys on the other. And there was a boy walking. Jeff's mother would also confirm that they saw four boys. So a lot of people do actually say they saw four boys. So it's possible. We're going to find out later that there's someone else that often hung out with the other three. But in reality, there was only three bodies found. So
Jamie Clark Ballard, 15 years later, will say in 2009 affidavit that she saw the three boys playing in her large backyard. She lived only 3 doors down from the Hobbs house. This sighting puts them all the way on the other side of the neighborhood, if this is true. All the other sightings put the kids in the north part of the neighborhood, but that's because the police only interviewed people there. Her mother, Deborah Moyer, will also say she saw 3 boys playing in the backyard. The backyard ran up to the bayou, and there was no fence. She didn't like it when kids played there because she worried that they would get hurt, which is why she remembered. She wasn't interviewed by police at the time. The police mainly interviewed people who lived north and west, and Jamie lived further south. One of the many mistakes the police make in this case. Also, at 5:30, Terry Hobbs and his daughter Amanda start looking for Stevie. John Mark Byers finds Christopher at 5:30 riding his skateboard in the street, something he had told Christopher not to do as it's dangerous. John Mark Byers finds Christopher at 5:30 riding his skateboard in the street, something he had told Christopher not to do as it's dangerous. John gives Christopher a whipping with his belt for it. He leaves Christopher in the carport and tells him to clean it up and that he'd be back after he picks up Ryan. This is the one sighting that absolutely happened. When John Mark Byers returns, Christopher once again is not home. He finds this strange as he's already been punished once. Even though Christopher is described as a rambunctious kid, he's on Ritalin for ADHD. John found it very strange that Christopher would have gone again, knowing he would get in a lot of trouble. There were a couple more sightings, but this was a neighborhood with lots of kids and an elementary school. There were probably lots of kids running around outside at that time. So in the interest of saving time, we're not going to go through every sighting.
Yeah, I will say I actually don't find it that strange as an ADHD kid for him to, like, even though he did already get a whipping for leaving, ADHD kids do not have that impulse control. So if his friends came by and were like, hey, do you want to come and play? He's not going to be like, well, hang on. I did already get punished for not being here once. Maybe he's 8. He's an ADHD 8-year-old, right?
He's gone.
I mean, I don't have that impulse control.
No kids do.
No. And especially the ADHD. That makes so 8-year-olds in general don't have great impulse control. Now add in the ADHD, which takes away your impulse control.
Yeah.
He don't care. He don't remember that he remembers getting in trouble, but he can't put that together, right? If his friends come by, he's going to hang out. So I don't find it that strange. It was 1993 and people didn't really have such a great grasp and understanding of what ADHD does to your brain.
I don't even think ADHD was a thing back then. Was it? I don't think it was.
It's been around for a lot longer. So Ritalin was created in 1938. So it's been around for a long time. It's been around,
but it wasn't.
But it wasn't as
It wasn't diagnosed, highly diagnosed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was very rare cases, and you had to be really, really extreme.
Yeah,
for it to be. Yeah. So I think the fact that he was diagnosed with ADHD in 1993, and B, that he was on Ritalin for it is great. It shows that even in this small town in Arkansas, the parents, they gave a shit about their kids, which I will say I think kind of leads more to why Mark Byers, or John Mark Byers, whatever, why he probably wasn't guilty. A lot of people say he was abusive to his kid and he did this, he did that. No, it was 1993. It was Arkansas. His kid had ADHD, which he was trying to deal with, but ADHD kids, man. I mean, I am ADHD myself. We're a pain in the ass.
Oh,
we push parents' limits, right?
I know.
And I mean it in the
And
nicest
teachers.
way. Yeah, exactly. And I don't mean this as any attack on those kids. That's just they can be difficult if you don't have a great
Mhm.
I am difficult as an adult for myself. So I am well aware how difficult kids with ADHD can be. And I think that he's doing the best he can. And there was a time that I was like, you know what? This guy, he totally did it. Because in the Paradise Lost documentary, initially he comes off as quite the guy. If you watch that and have no context of anything behind it, you're gonna be like, wait a minute. Especially later when it comes to this teeth impression and he has his teeth removed. Like there's a whole thing. So I can see why people thought he could have been involved, but I think there's a lot of things in here that shows how much he loved his son, his stepson, by the way. Right? So just keep that in mind.
Between 5 and 6, Terry Hobbs goes over to David Jacoby's house with his daughter Amanda to play guitar. Terry wasn't too worried about Stevie at this point. It's worth mentioning that Terry agrees he went to David's house but denies that he played his guitar. Terry and David have disagreed on this since day one. At 5:45, Alan Bailey Jr. tells police he sees the boys and Michael Moore told him they were in a hurry. Stevie was there but didn't speak. Alan said both boys had their backpacks on and that Stevie was wearing red shorts with white shoes. However, the missing persons report has Stevie wearing blue jeans and no bags were ever found with the boys. It's not clear if their book bags were missing from their homes. Alan's father, Otto Bailey, confirmed his son's statement, saying they did see Stevie and Michael as they were backing out of their driveway to go to baseball practice. He saw them riding their bikes down the road towards the Mayfair apartments. He also claims they were wearing backpacks. Sheila Bailey would also confirm the same thing. At 6 p.m., 15-year-old Ben Crafton reports that he sees Stevie Branch and Michael Moore biking down the street. He saw Kim Williams, who is in grade 4, riding her bike with them. Ben said the boys had a new red bike and an older green bike that looked like it had been painted several times. This detail is important. Stevie did have a new red and black bike. Michael did have an older green bike. When the police spoke to Kim Williams, she confirmed that she saw Stevie and Michael riding their bikes towards Robin Hood Woods. Kim would also report seeing 3 older boys coming out of the woods at the same time. 2 of the boys were black, and she saw them going into a house on Goodwin. Kim never reported seeing Christopher Byers. At 6 p.m., Jason Goebel sees 2 boys riding their bikes. At 6 p.m., Dana Moore was walking her dog and saw her son Michael riding bicycles with Stevie Branch, and Christopher Byers was holding onto the back of the bike. They were heading north on 14th Street to the intersection of 14th and Goodwin, the entrance to Robin Hood Hills. Dawn Moore, Michael's sister, had also been out riding her bike when she saw 3 teenagers, 1 white, 2 black, coming out of the woods. They asked her, "Do you want a shot?" To which Dawn assumed they meant drugs, which was confirmed by her friend Kim Williams, who was with her at the time. Later, Dawn would question her timing, thinking that this may have been earlier. It's a lot of names.
It is, yeah.
I'm like, also get so confused.
That's why I'm so confused when I'm going through it.
Right?
I'm like, okay, who's this person?
I know. There's so many names.
I'm on episode 8, but like they said that there's no bags, but then they find clothes and bags at the scene.
They didn't find bags. They didn't find bags at the scene.
But like they're sacks. They found some sort of like sacks that they had.
No, the sacks is what they're putting the items in, right? Like there wasn't any bags found. A lot of people did say that there was bags, but no bags were ever found.
I'm confused. That's why I'm watching the movies, because I'm like,
So you are watching, what's it called? Paradise
Lost. It's very graphic though, Sophia. So if you don't like seeing little boys beat up, I suggest not watching some of it.
Yeah, I don't do very well with that stuff. Like, I really, really don't. Like, it fucks up my whole month. Like, seriously, I do not do well with kids getting hurt. I don't.
Yeah, it is very graphic.
Yeah, and they even tell you it's very, very graphic.
Yeah, the opening scene of the first one is the bodies, like their bodies on the bank.
It's
Even,
called Paradise Lost.
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a TV series.
yeah, yeah, it's a three-part HBO documentary. It's on Crave or Apple TV. Between 6 and 6:30, Cynthia Rico is driving by the woods and she says she sees all three boys in the woods by the drainage ditch. Now, I'm going to say if you're driving by woods, how sure can you be that you saw the three boys in the woods by a drainage ditch? Because there's trees and you're driving. You're not driving towards them, so it's not going to be in your like right out your front, like your windscreen, right? Like you're going to see them looking to the side. So I don't know how credible I would say that is. At 6:30 p.m., John Mark Byers claims that he arrived home from the courthouse with Ryan to find that Christopher was again not at home. John, Melissa, and Ryan Byers left their home at 6:30 p.m. to drive around the neighborhood in order to find Christopher. Also at 6:30, Jamie Clark Ballard is leaving her house and sees the three boys heading towards the Hobbs home. She calls out to Christopher, telling him he needs to go home. Christopher says he doesn't need to do what she tells him to do. Jamie Clark is like an older sister of a friend. So, as an 8-year-old and some 13, 14-year-old is telling him, you need to go home. He's like, I don't need to listen to you, which of course, that's very typical behavior, right? At the same time, Terry Hobbs steps out of the house and yells at the boys to go home. But if this is true, Terry Hobbs is involved in the story much earlier than he has ever claimed before. This was also 16 years later, just like her other statement. And again, she was not questioned at the time. It's possible that this was another day, not the day of the murders. At 6:30, Jeff Martins sees all three boys on bikes heading towards the Robin Hood area. He had also claimed to have seen the boys at 5:30, only at the time he said there were 4 boys. Between 6:30 and 6:45, Brian Woody says he sees 4 boys with 2 bikes going into Robin Hood Hills. At 6:30, Charles Ashley Jr., Jesse's cousin, said he and Jesse were at his house when Connie Mulder slapped Cody Dollar. Stephanie Dollar called the police and 3 patrol cars responded. Jesse then left the Dollars and Charles didn't see him again that evening. Ashley would tell police that Jesse Miskelly and Jason Baldwin stayed together a lot. Between 6 and 6:40, Michelle Eccles said the whole family, including Damien, will go over to a friend's house. They stay for roughly 30 minutes. The daughter of the family opened the door, but her parents were not home. Michelle remembers this because her mom was writing a note, and she sat down to watch 90210, which began at 7 p.m. They all went home together, where she finished the show, and Damien was around and on the phone. So yeah, there's a lot of people saying a lot of different things happened at the same time.
7 p.m., Dana Moore is now very concerned that Michael is not home and goes out looking for him. She goes to Pam Hobbs' house, and at some point she talks to Terry Hobbs. Terry Hobbs' whereabouts during this time have never been figured out completely. Another mistake that the police made during the investigation is that they never interviewed the parents. Understandably, they always treat the parents as victims, which of course they were. However, when a child goes missing, and in this case, 3 children from different families, the parents should be considered suspects. You start your investigation with the people closest to the victims and work outwardly. Statistically, it often is the parents. So at the very least, the police should have looked into all the parents and their alibis. The first time Terry Hobbs really sits down with the police is over a decade later. We know that at some point, Terry has an interaction with Dana Moore, and at another point, he talks to John Mark Byers, but what the exact times were, we don't know. 7 p.m., Christopher Wall sees Christopher Byers and at least one other boy heads towards Robin Hood. A few days after the murders, an anonymous caller would tell police that Wall liked to hang around young kids. Wall was brought in for questioning, and he did pass a polygraph test and had a solid alibi. Christopher Wall could be the last person to see any of the 3 boys alive. At 7:30, John Mark Byers, who was already out looking for Christopher, saw a police officer at a dollar store and told him of his son's disappearance. According to Byers, he was told to wait until 8 p.m. before making an official report with the police. Byers explained to the officer that the reason he was so concerned was that Christopher had never disappeared like this before. This statement was later contradicted by Melissa Byers during an interview on May 25, 1993, when she told police that Christopher had disappeared on several other occasions for hours at a time. At around 8 p.m., Jennifer Bearden calls Damien back, but she says he's not home. When she calls back at 9:20, however, he is. She asks Damien where he had been, and Damien tells her Jason's mom had taken them somewhere, but didn't say where or what they did. John Mark Byers called the West Memphis Police Department at 8 p.m. to report that his stepson Christopher was missing. Officer Regina Meek went to the Byers home. 15 minutes later, Dana Moore shows up and tells both Officer Regina Meek and John Mark Byers that she had seen the three boys at 6 p.m. heading towards Robin Hood Hills. Byers stated that this was the first time he had been aware that Christopher was not alone. Officer Meek heads towards Robin Hood Hills to begin searching. When Officer Meek walks down to the pipe in Robin Hood Hills, it begins to get dark. There were so many mosquitoes. She felt like she was breathing them in. One thing to note about mosquitoes, they are attracted to breath. So if you are breathing, they are biting. So remember that for later. Terry Hobbs joins John Mark Byers in looking for the boys around this time also.
You know, that's a good point that they never really did question the parents until later. Suspect number one, usually the parents, right? You look in, you at least question them. Where were you? What were you doing? Who can collaborate that your story, right? And they didn't. They didn't do that. So total misjudgment on the police's part. I get that you don't want, the parents are claiming that their kids are missing and you don't want to upset them, but follow statistics, people. Like, obviously, it's not all parents, but I don't know if my kids were missing and they were questioning me, that's fine. Ask all the questions you want. I want them found. So, of course, you would want to answer all the questions, right? But they didn't. So,
at 8:42, Officer Regina Meek gets another call regarding a black man who entered the Bojangles restaurant. She heads to the Bojangles restaurant, but doesn't go inside the restaurant. She pulls up to the drive-through window instead. She is told by an employee that about 30 minutes prior, around 8:15, a man had blood on his face and arm, muddy feet, was wearing a white cap, black pants, and a denim sleeveless shirt, and was described as mentally disoriented, had gone into the women's bathroom. The man had left Bojangles just minutes before Officer Meek had arrived. Blood had been smeared on the walls of the women's bathroom, but Officer Meeks never enters the bathroom or the restaurant, so she doesn't collect any evidence. No blood samples, no photographs, or anything. She clears the scene at 9 p.m. without ever seeing it. She got a call that someone is egging a house, so she leaves Bojangles. It seems like she was the only officer on call that night, but honestly, I don't think that's an excuse for this poor police work. A bloody man in a restaurant should take precedence over a house being egged. At the very least, she should have had the bathroom closed and sealed off until she could go back to it. I understand that the urgency of the boys being missing wasn't there yet. They assumed they were just out playing and lost track of time, which is often the case. And sure, the man that would come to be known as Mr. Bojangles hadn't committed a crime, but he was bloody, so possibly injured or in distress. She probably should have looked for him at the very least, but it's easy to look back now and think she should have done more, especially considering that if you left the crime scene, the first place you would reach that had a bathroom would be the Bojangles restaurant. And later, there would be a hair found at the crime scene that appears to belong to a black man. Unfortunately, after Officer Meek left, the employees cleaned up the bathroom. The next day, Detective Ridge shows up to Bojangles to collect evidence. He was able to find some blood that was missed by the employees. However, the blood was never tested and the sample was lost. Conveniently
Right?
lost, right?
Yeah.
He does admit this in the trial, but it didn't make a difference. Like, how do you know? You don't lose
Right?
samples from a crime scene.
Exactly. And this is the biggest fuck up of the cops, right?
Maybe it was Detective Ridge
Uh-oh.
who conveniently lost samples. Just saying.
Right. But like we said, at the very least, this man goes into this restaurant that appears to be, he's in mental distress of some kind. He is covered in blood and mud. And the cop doesn't even get out of her car to go and check the bathroom. What? And I'm sorry. Hey, officer, someone's house is being egged. Oh my goodness, let me rush over. Fuck, who cares?
I don't know. It just
Like,
seems really weird to me. It just doesn't even seem like normal. Like, it just seems weird.
yeah.
Priorities and just, I don't know.
And whether this guy,
sucks.
yeah, it sucks because we'll never know who this guy was.
Yeah.
And whether he has anything to do with this case or not, he was covered in blood and mentally in distress, right? You just left that guy. You didn't even care to go look for him to see, like, if you're not thinking the missing boys are a priority at this time, the house being egged was over this guy. What if he had been injured? What if he'd been hit by a car? What if you have no idea. But it should have been priority at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's easy to look back and say, but the boys were missing. They weren't concerned yet. It was only 6:30, right? They were not too, the cops were like, no, don't, give it some time. They're probably just out playing. In hindsight, yes, that situation should have come first. But at the time, Mr. Bojangles should have been the priority. And at the very least, like we said, close off that bathroom and tell the restaurant employees not to touch it until we come back. But instead, she says, no, don't worry about it. All good. Even though I haven't seen it, all good. You go ahead and clean it. Like, she gave the employees permission to, yep, clean it up. I mean, thank God they didn't do such a great job because they were able to get samples, but it didn't fucking matter because dipshit lost it, right? Like, this part drives me crazy because it could be the whole answer to this case, but we'll never know. It might not mean anything, but we'll still never know.
A lot of the cases are exactly like that. It's the cops that mess it up.
Yeah.
Right?
And I don't think they do it intentionally. Like, I don't think they're like, ha ha ha, I'm gonna just throw this.
Oh, no, but they're like, they're
do your
lucky
fucking
from
job. Yeah. Do your fucking job properly. And then it wouldn't be this issue. And again, in 1993, you could only do so much with blood and DNA and all that stuff. However, there's been cases that were way before that cops had the forethought to say, you know what, we're going to save this blood sample just in case. And they did. And later, when our technology got better and DNA results could be found and stuff like that, cases have been solved because some very smart cop decided to save a blood sample from 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and that solved the case. It was 1993. It wasn't that, like, they could still check, they could still do blood test or like some testing. They could see whether you were like A positive or B positive or whatever. They could still do some, and they did still rely on some blood samples for solving crimes and stuff. So, dude, any cop out there, remember to, keep track of your evidence and shit and collect the evidence. Just a heads up from a non-cop. Just thought it might be important. Who knows? Who am I to say? So at 9 p.m., Ryan Clark, Christopher Byers' 13-year-old brother, went to the woods with Brett Smith, Richie Masters, and Robbie to look for Christopher Byers. They went in from the Goodwin dead end and went to the bayou by the swing because he thought that Christopher and his friends always played on the neighborhood side of the pipe because Christopher was afraid to cross it. While they were searching, they heard what sounded like 5 real loud splashes in the water. Then he heard the grass and brush crackling. After the first 2 splashes, Ryan yelled, "Hello? Is anyone over there?" After the third splash, Brett and Ryan got scared and ran back to the dead end. He and Brett ran down W.E. Cat until they got to the dead end of McCauley. They ran to the end towards the pipe. This is super confusing, guys. Sorry, but it's just the directions or location in the woods. And Robbie told them that what they had heard. When they got to the pipe, they heard a gunshot, or what they thought was a gunshot. Richie and Robbie went across the pipe to check things out. They were gone for about 10 minutes and they came back, all 4 boys, crossed the pipe and started looking in the woods. Walked down into the chute, crossed on a tree towards the open field. They were in the woods on the north side of the pipe for about 30 minutes. They saw a brown jacket, but knew it had been there for some time. When they came back out, Brett's mother was calling on them, and they went back to Ryan's house to see if Christopher had come home. When they went back in and went to the pipe bridge and crossed it, when they heard what they thought was a gunshot being close to the Blue Beacon truck stop and the interstate, it's possible it could have been a car backfiring or something. Sounds travel weird through the woods, right? Like it bounces off trees and stuff. I know the amount of times I have said, like, "Oh my God, it was a gunshot." My husband's like, "It's a car." So,
Especially back then in the 90s, because their cars always backfired.
oh, right?
Right? They were
Yeah.
just like, yeah.
Especially like in that area, you're gonna have a lot of like carbureted cars and stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
A lot of
exactly. Yeah,
that old school shitty, like scare the
exactly.
crap out of you when they
Yeah,
backfire. And even like something hitting like a pipe, right? Or like a tree, a
yeah,
lot of things are mistaken for gunshots.
yeah,
I swear I hear them all the time. And my husband's like, "Jesus Christ, that's not," he's like, "No, that was this," or "No, that." And I'm like, "Okay."
yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah, no, same here, right? The
yeah,
kids knock over the mailbox outside all the time. And I'm like, "Oh, it's a gunshot."
right?
He's like, no.
I'm sure if I ever actually heard a gunshot, I wouldn't even flinch.
Yeah,
And my husband would be like, "Really? An
yeah,
actual one and you don't
yeah.
move?" I'd be like, "Oh, that's what they sound like." They also didn't see any bikes, so knowing now that the bikes were found in the water right by the bridge, they must have already been put in the bayou by this time. If they heard 5 splashes when they were in the area on the other side of the bridge, that could have been the 3 bodies and the 2 bikes being thrown into the water. The report doesn't mention if the splashes were in quick concession, so we don't know if it was like splash, 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 right? Or if it was like splash, splash, like, so we don't, it's hard to say because depending on how much time it was in between the splash could point to how many people were involved also. Like if it's really quick, there's going to need to be more than one person.
Mhm.
If not, there would have had to have been at least 2, possibly more, due to the distance between each body also, and the bikes. That's, of course, if the splashes were in fact the bodies and the bikes. Being that there were animals in the area, it's really hard to know for sure. And also not to discredit Ryan, because he has no reason to lie. And I don't think it was a lie at all. It's dark, your little brother's missing, you're in the woods, you're hearing noises. Who knows, right? It's so hard to say what. I mean, I like to think of myself as this big tough chick. I'd probably be shitting my pants. Like,
Yep.
you're in the dark woods and you hear a noise. "Oh my God, what's that?" So, yeah, it's hard to say.
It's believed that the murders had to have happened in a short timeline. Based on evidence like the lack of mosquito bites, they would have been murdered sometime around 8 p.m. And Ryan and his friends hearing the splashes around 9:15 p.m. means that they would have been right there when the killer or killers were covering up their crime scene. Which also means 2 of the popular alternate suspects could not have done this. John Mark Byers and Terry Hobbs were both accounted for at this time. Even though there was no guns used in the murders, what they thought was a gunshot could have been something else. Remember, these woods are small, not much bigger than a football field. And at this time, there were so many people around looking for the boys. the killer or killers would have heard Ryan calling out.
Okay, I just want to clarify whether it's important or not. When we reference that it's not much bigger than a football field, we're talking about an American football field. I believe their football fields are smaller, right?
Oh,
Hang
yeah.
on.
I'm curious now too. I thought they were just all standard size.
Okay, so a Canadian football field is bigger. It measures 110 yards long and 65 yards wide, while an American football field is 100 yards long and 53 and one-third yards wide. So yeah, so an American football field is smaller. Whether it makes a huge difference or not, I know when I think of woods, I think of like a massive area. This is just, it's really not that big.
Right. Okay.
Around 9:19, Terry Hobbs and Stevie's sister Amanda go to pick up Pam, who's at work. Terry goes inside and uses the phone to call the police to report Stevie missing, before even telling Pam, Stevie's mom, that he's missing. The Hobbs didn't have a home phone, so he couldn't have called at home. Pam goes to the car after her shift. Amanda is in there waiting, and Pam has 2 pieces of candy, one for each of her kids. She hands one to Amanda, and when she asks where Stevie is, Amanda tells her he's missing. 9:24. Officer Regina Meeks responds to Dana Moore's missing person report for her son Michael Moore. So all 3 boys have now been reported missing. The police have yet to take this seriously. Other than Officer Meek doing a quick check at the edge of the woods earlier, the only people who have been searching for the boys up to this point have been the families and the members of the community.
That is an awful way for Pam to find out that her son is missing. It's something that her adults should never have had to been the one to tell her that. It's really sad.
Yeah, it is. Okay, 9:30. Narlene Hollingsworth, along with her husband, 2 sons, 2 daughters, and a family friend, were in their family station wagon on the way to pick up a friend from the laundromat. It's so funny because, like, we had a station wagon and we used to do our laundry at the laundromat too.
Really?
It was just such a common thing back in the 90s, right?
See, I don't know. When I first was like reading all this stuff about the laundromat, I'm like, why do so many people use a laundromat? Like I'm like, I've
And
never.
I don't even remember not having a washing machine. I don't know, it's super weird, but I remember even when my mom couldn't take me, I'd have like my garbage bag and I'd go on the bus at like 13 years old and take my clothes to the laundromat. Like
Really?
but yeah, but I don't ever remember not having a washing machine. Like it's super weird. I don't know.
Yeah. I remember
Yeah.
once asking someone like, how do I wash like a king size duvet? I'm like, can that go in like my washing machine? Because it seems it's really big, right? It's like our winter one. It's super heavy. I'm like, can it go in just in our washing machine? And they're like, oh no, you should take it to a laundromat because their machines are bigger. I'm like, the fuck's a laundromat? I'm like, what? What do you mean? And they're like, where they have like the place you go for the washer and dryer.
Yeah.
I'm like, they're in my house. Like I
Yeah.
didn't know what it was. And then they're like, well, haven't you seen it in movies? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought it was an American thing. I don't know.
They were very common in the 90s.
Yeah.
Now I just buy large capacity washing machines. Like I always make sure it's the largest capacity I can find, right? Because I have a king size too, and I don't want to go to
same.
a laundromat.
Well, I just take it to a dry cleaner.
Oh my God.
I'm like, that seems like so much work.
Famous money bags.
No, I'm just like, I don't want to do, I don't know. I'm always afraid of like flooding my wash. I don't know. I'm like, it feels like it's too big. And I have the big capacity one because I got it for like having the day home and stuff, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
we have a lot of laundry. And like the smaller ones I'll put in there. That's not a big deal. But like a king size, I'm like, whoa, you feel so big. I don't want to put you in there.
I have a big fluffy one. And yeah, I put it in there. I don't know if it actually washes it, but it smells good when it comes out. So
that's all that matters,
right? Narlene is related to many people in the area, and it's a little complicated and messy. For example, her ex-husband is her current husband's brother. On their way to the laundromat, they are on a service road that goes by the Blue Beacon truck stop and the Robin Hood Hills hills. Their headlights shine on two people who Narlene recognizes as Damien Eccles and Dominique Tier. They see them coming out of the woods near the Blue Beacon truck stop heading towards the estates. They will give statements, and some will testify in the trials that the two look to be muddy. Narlene apparently didn't like the fact that the two were out so late, although it's only 9:30. Her husband said not to worry about it, that he sees them out late all the time. Narlene replied, "We need to pick them up." Her husband then replies, "Where are you going to put Damien? Are you going to let him sit in one of the kids' laps?" Narlene says, "No, let's just keep going." The sighting is important because there were reports of the splashes at 9 p.m. Now at 9:30, we have Narlene and the family claiming to see Damien and Dominique here, leaving the woods. And Narlene was related to Dominique, so she said she knew for sure this was Dominique. She was 100% sure. This is not good for the prosecution, though, as they were sure that Dominique was not present at the time of the murders. So the prosecution will say that Narlene was right about Damien being there, but they were wrong about Dominique being there. That it was actually Jason Narlene and her family saw, not Dominique. But Narlene was related to Dominique. If she was going to mistake one of the two people, you'd have to assume that it would be Damien, not the person she's related to. Some people say the Hollingsworth were lying just to try and collect the reward. But if that's the case, why wouldn't they have said it was Jason they saw with Damien? Why would they say it was Dominique?
Sometime between 9 and 10:30, Damien would talk on the phone to some girls we mentioned before. We'll go over this more later when we get to his alibi. Between 10 and 11 p.m., Nancy Garrett, who lives on Proctor, will report that she heard 5 gunshots. Now remember, Ryan and his friends said that they heard a gunshot earlier in the woods. Now Nancy is saying she heard 5 gunshots. As guns were not used in the murders, this could mean that the gunshot Ryan heard earlier and these 5 gunshots are of no significance to the murders, or that they were also not gunshots at all. This was also on an area where hunting was prevalent. There were wildlife around and people in the area just had guns. So the shots heard could be a number of things. It's also in the US, right? So people do, in some states, people have more guns. And I mean, I don't know what their gun laws are, whether they're allowed to just shoot them randomly, but
maybe back in the 90s they were.
Right? Like, who
You know,
knows?
people like in Texas walk around with guns, don't they?
Yep. Yeah, they have like a, don't quote me on this, but isn't Texas like a mandatory carry state?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if Arkansas is, but who knows? Like,
I don't know.
you know, in these small towns and stuff, people do different things.
The 90s were so different, right?
They were a wild time, y'all.
They were the good times back then.
Yeah. So together with Dana Moore, Melissa Byers, and Ryan Byers, John Mark Byers began to search the Robin Hood Hills area, the last known location of the boys. They go into the hills, but not far. They could see bicycle tracks that led to the area where the boys would eventually be found. It was already dark then, according to Byers. They were joined by Officer Moore of the West Memphis Police Department at 10:20, who continued to search with them until 11 p.m. When John Mark Byers arrived home at 11 p.m., he called the sheriff to request a search and rescue team. He was told to call Denver Reed, the leader of the Crittenden County team, the following morning. I mean, that's shitty. You're like, these are 8-year-old kids, and you're like, oh, yeah, give them a call in the morning. Bad call. He and Ryan left the house again and drove to the Blue Beacon truck wash, where he told the people inside that he was looking for Christopher and 2 other boys. He then drove his vehicle around the back. For some time, Byers and Ryan shouted for the boys and honked their horn before they drove back home. They were met there by Melissa, Terry Hobbs, Stephen Branch's grandfather, and Dana Moore. After a short discussion, the group decided to make another attempt to search for the boys in the woods. At midnight, Heather Cleat will talk to Damien and Jason on a 3-way call. It's safe to say that by midnight, whatever happened, whether Damien and Jason were involved in it or not, it's over. It's all done by midnight.
Now we enter May 6th, the day after the murders, and the boys still have not been found. At 1:30 a.m. Thursday, May 6, 1993, Sergeant Ball of WMPD drove to the Byers home to inform John Mark Byers and Melissa Byers that a search for the boys was being conducted in the area. After he left at about 2 a.m., Tony Hudson, a friend of Byers, came to the house. Byers and Hudson left soon after to search the Mid-Continent building, which was being rebuilt after having been blown over. They thought that the boys may have been hiding there. When they arrived, they saw a black van nearby. It was locked, and they assumed that it belonged to one of the workers at the site. They continued their search for an hour before they returned home with the intention of resuming their search in the morning. At 6 a.m., Todd Moore, who is Michael Moore's dad, arrives home from work driving a truck. As there was no cell phones at this time, this is when he first found out Michael is missing. Several witnesses had seen two sets of bike tracks heading into the woods, so this became the main focus for the search. Neighbors used dirt bikes and ATVs to search the woods for the missing boys. Although they are trying to help find them, and obviously they are all hoping to find the boys alive, this is not good for the crime scene. All the tracks being made by the dirt bikes and ATVs are covering up or destroying any other tracks in the area. The police will soon realize this is a crime scene, but all these other vehicles and people that have been going through there are going to make it hard to figure out what evidence is part of the crime and what isn't. The water is somewhat low in the bayou at this time, so the banks are muddy. The dirt bikes and ATVs rip up the dirt, making a mess and potentially destroying crucial evidence. They will find a footprint near where the bodies of the boys are found, and when they make a cast of that footprint, they are not able to match it to anybody. This piece of evidence is often pointed to in defense of the West Memphis 3, which could very well be, but unfortunately there are so many people in the woods searching for the boys that it's hard to say for sure.
One of the searchers, Tim Cotton, said the area north of the pipe smelled like blood, which is possible. There wasn't a lot of blood where the bodies were found, but there would have been a lot of blood due to the injuries. However, this is a swampy, boggy area in the woods, which probably had a wet, dank smell to it. Could you distinguish a blood smell on top of that? It's hard to say. There would have been a lot of humidity, which typically holds smells in, so it's possible. At 1:30 p.m., a juvenile corrections officer with Crittenden County, Steve Jones, is in the Robin Hood Hills woods when he sees a shoe floating in a diversion ditch. He becomes concerned that the boys may have drowned. They could have slipped off the pipe. One could have slipped, then the others tried to help him, and things went bad. He meets with Detective Brian Ridge at a place called the Devil's Den. The ditch is bordered by 8-foot drops that's dry, except when the rain swells like it recently did. He tells Ridge that he sees the shoe and his thoughts about them falling in the water. Detective Ridge would try to slide down the ridge to get the shoe. However, he ends up falling instead and falls right into the water, unexpectedly making the tragic discovery. Detective Brian Ridge landed on the body of Michael Moore.
That's not really...
That would be retirement for me. I'd be done.
Yeah. I mean, what a way to discover him, right?
Oh, my God.
When he stood up, his foot didn't sink into the mud as he would have expected it to, and he realized he's standing on something solid. When he lifts his foot, a pale white body floats to the surface of the water. This is the body of 8-year-old Michael Moore. It doesn't take them long to realize that this was not an accident. Detective Gary Gitchell is notified immediately. He calls dispatch to open a case. That case number, there's a lot of controversy about this case number, okay? So the case number is 930506666. It's often said that he assigned that case number, that the case before it was not 665, that he just made it this to go along with the Satanic Panic. Cool as that might sound, he did not. This just happened to be the case number. So he didn't do anything special. This is just what it is. The detectives are crawling through the water on their hands and knees, knowing they are likely going to find something else. Michael's body was found, pressed down into the mud. Michael's body was found pressed into the water, no, pressed down into the mud with a stick. As the detective is crawling around in the water, they come across more sticks driven into the mud. But those sticks don't have bodies under them. They instead have clothing wrapped around them. Almost all the clothing belonging to the boys missing were found. The clothing that was missing were 5 socks and 2 pairs of underwear, but everything else is found. That's really odd, right? It's bizarre. Like, so either whoever did this took 5 socks and 2 pairs of underwear as trophies, but 5 socks, like, I don't, for some reason, 5 socks just seems so bizarre, right? You're just gonna leave one. Like, wouldn't you have taken just 1 sock? I don't, it just seems so bizarre.
Odd amount.
It is, yeah. 25 feet south of Michael Moore's body, they find the body of Stevie Branch at 256. This is also the area where they find the partial shoe print on the bank directly across where the body was found. Christopher Byers' body is found only 5 feet away from Stevie Branch's body. So keep note of that Michael Moore's body is found at least 25 feet away from Christopher and Stevie's body. This will come up later. All 3 boys were naked when they were found. As we said, their clothing, including their underwear, was wrapped around sticks that were pushed down into the mud under the water. When they found Christopher Byers' body, they found an even more gruesome discovery. It appeared that Christopher Byers had been castrated. His genital area had been severely abused. We will go further into this later.
Oh my God. We can't. What? I can't. I can't go further into that later. I have to. I have to turn you down because I can't listen to it.
That's okay. We're gonna go through the autopsies and go into great of detail. If you really if it's gonna be too upsetting, it's okay if you skip that one if you want to. Like, I totally get that because it's gonna be very graphic and very detailed. But I feel it's super important for the case. But I understand if it's too much for you.
All 3 boys had been hogtied, but not the typical way with wrists together and ankles together. They were tied left ankle to left wrist, right ankle to right wrist. This is not a commonly used hog tie method. It was historically used in some law enforcement contexts, though it is widely restricted or banned now due to the safety concerns, and it is also referenced in restraint contexts more generally. Historically, the reason for doing it this way instead of wrists together and ankles together comes down to control and movement restrictions. It limits leverage and rolling. When wrists are tied together and ankles are tied together, a person may still roll side to side and push up slightly using core strength or scoot or worm forward. Connecting each arm directly to a leg restricts independent movement on both sides of the body, making it harder to roll over, lift the torso, or kick forcefully, or use the legs and arms separately for leverage. Linking each side shortens the body's range of motion and creates tension through the back and the hips. That tension can make struggling more uncomfortable and therefore discourage movement. With wrists tied only together, someone might try to bring their hands toward their feet to manipulate the restraints. Cross-connecting limbs can make that more difficult. They are tied with their own shoelaces. Someone has taken very specific steps to try and cover this up.
I will say that I tried to get my husband to tie me up like this because I wanted to see what the difference was, right? I wanted to see how much range of motion you actually had if, like, your wrists were tied together and then your ankles tied together versus this way. He declined my request.
Oh.
But I'm like, man, I gotta have a friend that's willing to do this, right? Because I'm just curious. Like, this seems like such an odd step to take. It seems so bizarre to like that way. And for some reason, I just can't get over how bizarre it seems. So I just really, I'll get someone to help me out here. All right, Cash, you're it. Score. Thank you for volunteering.
I'll come tie you guys up.
You know what? We should do that. Sophia, you should tie me up one way and Cash up the other way, and then we'll see who can move and how much they can move.
Yeah, but what kind of knots?
We're going to go through that.
Okay.
Yeah, I have the
Okay.
specific
Because
knots.
I know how to do like the horse tie knot, like when
It's
you
like I
tie.
believe it was called a
Okay.
box step. I have
Okay, I need to
details.
learn how to make proper knots that don't come out, so this will be good for
Perfect. Excellent. This, you know what? This could be really informative, right? I feel like because I tried to see if anybody had done, like anyone in the investigation, if they had tried doing this, because it seems so significant to me, and it might not be.
Right.
I,
But they were also 8 years old, right? Like,
yeah, it just seems so specific. It's like it's so, it has, I don't know, it feels intentional, whether it's intentional because they're like, I am going to do it this way, or whether it's intentional because this is just how they themselves would tie people, which could say so much about the killer.
right.
Right? Like if I was to wanting to tie someone up, this is not how I would tie them up. It would never have crossed my mind to tie them up this way. So it seems significant, and it bothers me that none of the investigators, from what I could find, tried
Yeah.
to tie each other up this way to figure out why.
Well, certain people tie certain ways because of things they do in their life, right?
Yeah,
So, like, if you're tying horse lead around a fence, you would tie it a certain way. So you're like a farmer, right? If you do
exactly.
it this way, you could be in the military. If you do
Yeah.
it this way, right? And that
And
should
they
really
exactly.
pinpoint.
And they
Yeah.
did kind of think that this could possibly be a veteran because of the way that they were tied, which is great.
Oh,
But it didn't go further than that,
right.
right? Like they did look to see, like when they did questioning, they did ask if anyone knew of any veterans in the area, stuff like that. But I just feel this should have been looked into so much further,
Yeah, for
and it
sure.
and it wasn't.
The police made the Blue Beacon their staging area, entering the woods only from that side in an attempt to preserve the crime scene from any further contamination. Although at this point it was too late, the crime scene had already been destroyed.
By 3:55, West Memphis Utility is on scene pumping out the creek and blocking it with sandbags because they know they want to find any evidence they can in the water. That afternoon, Vicki Hutchinson showed up Marion Police Station. She had been accused of petty theft from the truck stop where she works. She had her son Aaron with her, and Aaron is described as being best friends with the young boys. Officer Donald Bray spoke to Aaron while his mom was in another room trying to sort out the petty theft situation. Officer Bray said that Aaron told him things about the murder that he could not have known, including the fact that the boys were drowned and hogtied. Aaron would go on to give a few interviews to the police, but as an 8-year-old does, each time he told a story to the police, they became more elaborate and wild, making it very hard to believe anything he says. And not because he intentionally was telling lies, but because he's a young boy and his friends were just murdered. And he's talking to the police. And this is something that young children often do. Not maliciously, they just tend to let their imaginations run wild and they're trying to please whoever asks them the questions. But potentially, he knew information about the crime that had not yet been released. Steve Jones tells Officer James Sudbury that the crime appears to have occult overtones and that there is only one person he can think of that might be involved, Damien Eccles.
That night, the police put out a bulletin over the police radio, which the press were monitoring already due to the boys being missing. The police state this department has a case of 3 male juveniles being abducted. They were found with their hands tied behind their backs and their genitals had been removed with a sharp instrument. Their bodies had been dropped in a remote area. Any department with a case similar to this, please advise this department. Attention, Inspector Gitchell. All information appreciated. So this statement was made the night of May 6th. This was a huge mistake for the police to release this statement, not only for the misinformation, but the part about the genitals being mutilated should have been kept from the public as holdback evidence. We've talked about that before. Holdback evidence is things that only the people involved in the case would know. It could still be used in a similar way if someone was to confess to the police that they murdered the boys and mutilated all of their genitals. because that wasn't the case, right? You know they are lying as only Christopher Byers was castrated. But if someone was to tell police that they did it and only castrated one of the boys, then you know they could be telling the truth. The police face a lot of criticism regarding this case. Some of it is unfounded and some is not. The most frustrating criticism, though, is that the police never pinned down these details about the timeline. Specifically, when they entered the woods, they talked to all the witnesses, but never follow up and question them for details, ensuring that all the statements that they gave are correct. So we don't know for sure what time the boys entered the woods. So we have to assume that they went into the woods sometime before 7 and that they were murdered sometime between 7 and 9 p.m. This 2-hour window is very tight. It's a very tight timeline for a triple murder. And the reason we believe they were dead by 9 p.m. is, if you remember, was the mosquitoes. Time of death is difficult to determine, but remember, Officer Meek went into the bayou at around 8:30 and was just on the edge of the bayou, and there were so many mosquitoes that she felt like she was breathing them in. Mosquitoes are attracted, like we said, to breath. So if you're breathing, they're still biting. Although everyone reacts differently to mosquito bites, there still would be marks on the boys. The boys have no evidence of mosquito bites. So either the boys were dead by 8:30, or so close to that time that there was not enough time for the reactions to occur. So we're being generous when we say 7 to 9. And that's important, right? Time of death is going to be really important. And the fact that there's no mosquito bites on these boys, that's one of the reasons a lot of people think they were murdered somewhere else. Their bodies were dumped, disposed of there. It's definitely like a puzzle part of this case that is really hard to explain. Oh yeah, so the police bulletin, it's often said there's no reason or no way that like Damien does make some statements that make it sound like he knows what happened to the boys. And it is often claimed that there is no way they could have known this information without being the ones that were on the scene and that did the killings. But this went over the police radio that the press was listening to. There's also lots of people that listen to police radios, right? This is a sensational case. Like, people talked about this case all the time. From the moment it was known that those boys were missing, there was false statements of who saw them, when they saw them, where they were, how many there were, right? So if this information was broadcast over radio and the wrong person heard it, it was being spread around quite quickly. There was lots of people that heard some parts of this statement. So when people say there's no way they could have known this, or this, unless they were the ones that did it, that's simply not true. Okay, so we're going to stop there for this episode. We've gone through quite a bit.
Yeah.
So next week we are going to continue on with like where the main people were at the time and stuff like that, and we're going to keep going. This, like we've said the last episode, there's a lot to this case, so
Yeah.
please stick with us because it's an important case. There's lots of We're going to go through a lot of stuff that's really important to it. But yeah, West Memphis 3 part 2 of 385. Just kidding.
Right.
There's going to be a lot, but it'll be worth it.
Yeah.
I have listened to like pretty much every podcast I can find on this case, like, and I've read so many books. Like, I'm reading John Mark Byers' book on this case, so I know the story inside and out, but then I still pick up on parts. I'm like, fuck right. Never thought of that before and stuff, right? Even though I've heard it, I just haven't, I guess, thought of it.
Have you seen what Jesse looks like nowadays?
Yeah.
He
Not
reminds
at
me
all
of
what
that
I
guy-
was expecting.
Right? And he reminds me of that guy from Home Alone.
Oh, yeah. I really like your point, though, about that he sounds autistic. I really like that point. I think I'm going to look at...
He repeats everything, right?
Yeah.
And looking for that confirmation.
Exactly.
Like the second, because I'm in this, when I did the second interview, right? They were trying to get him to say everything.
Exactly.
Not one where they would be like, oh, this it. And then he'd be like, Like,
Yeah.
He sounds more like he's autistic. And then Damien, I feel like there's more to him because he doesn't even have eye contact.
Yeah. And it's hard because I don't want to be like, oh, they're all autistic. But I think Damien, he's hard to read, right? Like Jesse, I think for sure there's
He might
definitely
not be
autism
autistic.
there.
he might not be autistic, but there's more to it than
Yeah,
just what you're saying because he doesn't make eye contact. So like ADHD, you don't like making eye contact, some people, right? So
yeah,
like it could be something else, but there's more to it
yeah.
than his manic depression there,
Right.
because I don't even get schizophrenia from him really.
Yeah, neither do I. I think that was totally like, I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, but
Well, and like
schizophrenic is,
his
yeah.
depression would come from his life. Look at how he was brought up.
Yeah, I
One
also
like
don't think
that
I would say
shock.
manic depressant either though, right? Like I think he just lives in a shitty time in a shitty area in shitty circumstances.
Yeah.
Right? I think, you know, it probably is more likely it's ADHD. And I think sometimes people assume, well, he's not hyperactive. He's got fucking shitty impulse control because he says shit that he shouldn't say all the time. Right? Like that
Yeah.
even though he's 18, most people, 18-year-olds would be like, oh, I'm not gonna say that. That get me in trouble. And his dumbass, he thinks it and he says it, which, and I say dumbass meaning like also think shit and say shit. Like, so, you know, I relate to you like on that way. But it's so sad because like Christopher Byard's parents, they had him diagnosed, they were medicating him, they knew what was going on. And Damien's parents, it seemed like at one time they're trying, but then they're like, but you're so difficult, we just would like you to fuck off. Like, how can two
But
people from the same area be so differently neglected? Like,
but also with like ADHD, they tell you your child will be difficult.
yeah.
But like I said, I just don't think it wasn't talked about as much as it is nowadays.
Oh, for sure. Autism back then was like the nonverbal, not like that was the only autistic
There
character.
was no mild, moderate, and severe. It was just
Exactly.
severe, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think if you like listen to his testimony, I'm gonna look it up and see if we're able to play any of his testimony.
that would be cool.
Yeah,
That would be really cool.
because it
Yeah,
is really important to
yeah,
hear the tone and
yeah.
hear how, right?
That would be, yeah,
So I'm gonna look into that. See, even if we can just, if we have like time, like you can play this much of a clip and it's okay. I'll see what we can do. But
yeah,
I think if we also just make sure we credited the people that actually have it.
oh, for sure. Yeah.
That way it
yeah,
doesn't look like we're stealing it. We're crediting it so
yeah.
that it's
Yeah.
not it's not ours. We're not
Even though they stole it.
Yeah. And then it's like, look, we didn't steal it initially. This
Hey,
motherfucker
at
They
did
least
it
stole it
first.
first.
Yeah.
it's not ours.
Right. So that's it for Moms on Mics this week.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Moms on Mics Podcast, on TikTok at Moms on Mics, and join our Facebook group, Moms on Mics.
If anyone has any topics you would like us to cover, or if you have any questions or suggestions, you can email us at momsonmics@gmail.com or submit through our website, momsonmics.com.
We would also appreciate it if you could rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening on. It really helps the podcast move up on their charts so it gets more exposure. I hope you join us again next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.